So for our research on Sudan, we started with some fun facts. The growth rate is currently 1.83%, and Arabic is the official language. The median age of the people is 18 years old, and the infant mortality rate is actually really high at 54%. Another thing is that their literacy rate is 61% on average, 50% female, and 71% male. So there's kind of a huge difference there. For our quote that we chose, we decided to do, "I was born into Sudan's civil war, and before I could read or write, I was using an AK-47 in the conflict between the Muslim North and animist Christian South over the land and natural resources," by Gair Douani. We felt like this suited Sudan well because they obviously have a lot of conflict in their history and have ongoing conflict currently too. So we just wanted to highlight that.
Historical highlights for Sudan. Their name is derived from Arabic, and it means the land of black people. They've also been plagued with many civil wars. The first one is the Sudanese Civil War, 1955 to 1972. And then the second one was 1983 to 2005. And then the next one was 2003 to 2010, so they kind of overlapped. And then secession of South Sudan, so when they left was on July 9th, 2011. And then their third civil war was in 2013 and went into 2020. And then their original religion was Christianity until they split from the South, and then it later became Islam.
So how are the children in Sudan? For education, a third of their population of children do not actually attend school. Their literacy rate is particularly low, like I mentioned earlier, with only 45 to 50% of girls who know how to read and write. They have poor access to schools, and children don't actually end up attending because they have so much stuff going on at home to worry about. And schools are also susceptible to violent attacks by outside groups. For their health, children have poor access to water. Around 1/3 of the population does not have access to safe drinking water. They have poor access to medical care with low quality treatments, and vaccines are not always available. They have measles outbreaks that are actually happening right now. And they have the largest rate of malnourished children out of any country. For child trafficking and child abuse, child labor is a prevalent form of child abuse, as is child marriage. They have laws that regard child marriage, but they don't necessarily enforce them. And female genital mutilation used to be a really big problem, but now they have some governmental regulation toward it. But the problem has not been fully resolved. It's just been aided with governmental regulation.
So the economy in Sudan is doing better. It's up 5% from 2020 to 2021, and their total GDP is 34.33 billion. But compared to the US's 23.32 trillion, it's not that high. Most of the GDP is produced by agriculture and mining. Banks own 80% of the assets in Sudan, and poverty is at 55.9%, and unemployment is at 18% in Sudan. Inflation has really taken a problem, up from 163% to 358%. And their economy has been on a downslide ever since 2017, but has been slowly recovering. But due to the war, it hasn't been very effective.
So for the geography of Sudan, it's located in Africa, and its capital is Khartoum. The lowest point location is the Red Sea, and in the north, their climate is with Libyan and Nubian deserts, so it's very arid climate. In the middle, they have a rocky, semi-arid desert, and it's mountainous along the border of Ethiopia. In the south, they have more of savanna, swampland, and semi-tropical rainforests. So the different parts have very different climates and ecosystems. About 37% of the land is fertile, but little is cultivated actually because of a lack of irrigation. And northern Sudan depends on the Nile River, but the south has more rainfall, so it's not as dependent on it. The north also has frequent dust storms in the summer called haboobs. These cause a problem with their population sometimes, and like the dust storms can really affect people's health and if they choose to leave their houses and stuff. So the dust storms are a big environmental hazard that they have.
We compared the U.S. to Sudan based on their culture. So for the U.S., a normal household has an average of 3.13 people per family, and then the men or the women can be breadwinners. But for Sudan, the household is typically multi-generational, so you'll have a lot of people. Their goal is to have as many children as possible. The women are normally the homemakers, and then the men are normally the breadwinners. And then we also compared naming. So for the U.S., the naming structure is your personal name, a middle name, and then your parents' last name. Whereas in Sudan, it is your personal name, your father's first name, and then your grandfather's first name.
So some current events on May 10th, there was an article about 19 million in Sudan facing food insecurities. Also on May 10th, there was a locust outburst that wiped out a fourth of the year's wheat harvest. World food programs temporarily shut down because of the war in Sudan. So all three of those tie together on why there's food insecurities in Sudan and why it is such a problem for them. And then the war in Sudan, it started in 2019 and is still going on. And it was an uprising against their dictator. It caused the fall of the country's economy and has created lots of people leaving the country, which is the next one, which is 860,000 people are expected to leave because of the fighting. And there was an appeal for 445 million from the UN to help refugees out.
For the government, post-Civil War to 2019, they had a democracy. So the executive branch was the head of Sudan and the prime minister. The legislative was the power was vested in the government and two chambers. So the National Assembly, which is a lower chamber, and then the Council of State, which is a higher chamber. And then the judicial branch was the Supreme Court. But then in 2019 to 2021, they had a totalitarian state, which was kind of leaning on dictatorship. In 2021 to 2023, they transitioned back into democracy. The current prime minister is Osman Hassan. And then elected in 2021, October 25th, was Adel Burhan, who's the head of Sudan currently. Their government is also headed by the Islamist Party, and their laws are founded mostly on Islam religion.
All right. And for our authentic assessment idea, first I want to start with the standard that we chose. We chose standard 5, which is relationships among people, places, ideas, and environments are dynamic. And the benchmark that we chose is that the student will analyze the context and draw conclusions about dynamic relationships. We also chose some geography competencies to go with our assessment idea. We said that the student will acquire geographic information from a variety of sources, organize and present geographic information using a variety of methods and resources, analyze geographic information to seek patterns, relationships, make predictions, make inferences, and draw conclusions. So for our authentic assessment idea, we decided that students will construct a picture collage and present their research to the class about one of the following topics addressing the geography of Sudan. They can choose from climate, terrain/topography, natural resources, natural hazards, and environmental issues. Students will be placed into groups and will research one of the topics. Their research collage and explanation should reflect on how their topic affects the people in Sudan in some way. For example, where they choose to live, what customs they adopt, and etc. other things. The objectives that we decided to use is we picked one for human geography and one for physical geography. So for human geography, students will be able to examine at least one effect of climate, topography, natural resources, natural hazards, or environmental issues on the population or culture of Sudan, which the blooms that we chose to use that goes with that is analyze. And for physical geography, students will create a picture collage reflecting physical geographical features based on their assigned topic, climate, topography, natural resources, natural hazards, or environmental issues. And for that, since they're creating a picture collage, we chose create as the Bloom's taxonomy piece. Our compelling question that we will ask our students is, how do geographical features / notables determine human interaction? Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoyed.